presentation is about the bird scooters, and Arian, Chris Stockwell, I assume is not here.
Yes, I'm
Oh, he's, okay, okay, so we'll turn it over to you.
And Chris is the local rep with the bird company. He's going to be.
Good afternoon, Chris, can you hear us okay? Chris?
There we go. Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute yet. Now we're good.
Okay, all right. Welcome, and we've got Arian up here at the podium, so between the two of you, take off.
So, my name is Arian Dickman. I am the tourism director here for Chowan County. This is Chris Stockwell. He is representing Bird. He's going to lead us in a presentation today that kind of takes you on the opportunity of bringing Bird to Edenton.
Wonderful. I was hoping I could share. Let me see. Can I share my screen? Can't pull my video up. It's just not letting me, but I can share my screen. Can everyone see that on? I assume the screen you guys can see.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, that's better than my face, anyways. So I will give you just a quick overview of sort of Bird, so you have a general idea of how the program works. Let's see here. There we go. So just a quick overview, not to take up too much time, but a quick overview on Bird and who we are. Ultimately, we are, you can kind of look at us now as sort of a shared micro electric vehicle company, and I say that now because the shift in sort of the general idea of electric vehicles has significantly increased to the smaller vehicles that are out there. So we happen to currently operate shared electric scooters. Now that subject to change in the future as things progress, but right now the vehicle that Bird operates is a shared scooter program. The idea really is how do we get people out of cars, particularly in some of these more touristy locations. When we work with, in this case, sort of a waterfront town, but beach towns specifically as well. The goal really is when people come in, how do we come up with a solution where they can park and not have to get back in their cars on a multiple trip basis. Useful in smaller towns, touristy towns like you all, also useful in some of the beach towns that we're in. But that's one of sort of the big solutions that we're trying to solve for as our programs have evolved over the last 5 years or so. The big solution that we have though is really those quick trips, right? How do you solve for trips you don't need to get into your car for, or how do you solve for trips that people are getting into their car for and don't have to ultimately? That 1 mile, sometimes 1 to 3 mile trips, maybe not that far down where you all are off, but that 1 to 2 mile trip where we don't have to get into the cars and we can really find a alternative solution for people to move around the towns and cities that we operate in. Quick backstory on Bird. Basically, I kind of summed this up with the adoption of scooters has been massive over the last 5 years or so. In the world of over 100 million rides on Bird since we have been founded. Our growth in cities has just sort of tenfold over the last couple of years. Last year alone, we opened up about 172 new cities, and we'll sort of be on pace to do something similar this year as well. The big takeaway I like to show on this is just the amount of rides that people have started to use our scooters for, and this is we are one of a few, and we're also one option for people to use. Right, there are many people that are now using their own personal scooters as well. So the idea of 100 million rides on Bird scooters, you can probably extrapolate that there are 200, 300 million rides on scooters generally over the last 2 or 3 years, in Bird's case 5 years. But the adoption of a new form of transportation like scooters has heavily grown over the last couple of years. Just a quick overview. So we work with cities big and small. At the end of the day, we can support almost any city that's out there. I did highlight a couple in North Carolina that we are in. Obviously, they're a little bit bigger than you all, but if you look up sort of the Hartsville, South Carolina, and smaller, we are operating in these cities. And typically, anything 1,500, 2,000. You add in some tourists, some tourists and visitors. Our programs work pretty well. Quick overview of just how it works. It's all app-based, so you download the Bird app, you can find the scooters based on that app located around town. You do a quick safety tutorial, you hop on the scooter, and you take it to the destination you need to get to. This is just a quick shot of our scooter. This is our Bird 3. This is the most advanced scooter that we've developed. I won't spend too much time. I always like to focus on the tires. I think it's a pretty cool piece of it. We've certainly really updated our tires. The cool part here is they are air-filled tires, which some would think causes an issue because they can puncture easier. But the cool part about our scooters is there's actually a gel insert, almost like a fix-the-flat, that automatically ejects after the scooter gets a puncture. It's just one of sort of a lot of the tech we have into this. I think that's a cool aspect of these scooters. It's a much smoother ride because we have air-filled tires, and we also came up with a solution should they get punctured. The gel expands almost immediately. So we do run a dockless model. This is really to provide flexibility for our riders. The whole point of Bird scooters and the micromobility industry is really to more easily get people from point A to point B. And we found that this model is the most efficient way to do that. It does provide sort of the freedom for people to use the scooters where and when they want. But the cool part is when we do work with cities and towns, the way that we manage our operations, manage the scooters, and sort of manage the expectations of the cities is through our fleet manager model. The fleet manager model has been developed to allow us to partner with local entrepreneurs in the cities and towns that we're operating in. This individual basically becomes the boots on the ground, but the unique part is that they are hyper local from the area. Occasionally know many of the people within the city. We're working with Martinsville, Virginia, and our fleet manager happened to be the neighbor of the city attorney. So there was obviously some nice accountability when it came to how the program was being run in that town. Also, neighbors and friends of that fleet manager. So we work in a partnership with this individual. They become, as I said, sort of our boots on the ground. We have a fun program. It's sort of a revenue share type program. So they have a little bit of skin in the game. So as the program evolves, so does their sort of responsibilities and results, benefits of being part of this program. We have a couple people who have shown interest as well for the area. We do partner with cities. Well, we always try to partner with cities and towns. And what that really means for us is giving the stakeholders from cities and towns we work with a direct point of contact to Bird. On top of having a local fleet manager, this individual basically can become your day-to-day contact. Questions, concerns, if we need to use some of our tech to zone off an area because there's a farmer's market going on. This is the individual that will work with the city to solve those solutions, solve those problems. But really, it creates an open dialogue about sort of just creating those proactive as well as reactive solutions for you all. I want to give you just a little bit of the tech. I won't go too deep in it. I'm not even, these are smarter people than me that create all this kind of good stuff. But the way that we operate is through sort of a geo-fence, geotech product. So we would create a zone specifically to the town. Typically, it is the surrounding area or the jurisdictional boundaries of the cities and towns that we operate in. And this is where the scooters can actively be used. If they were to leave the operating zone, they slowly come to a stop, so riders know that they have left the zone, and then the rider would be required to turn around and come back into that zone. That would be unless we have a relationship with the surrounding area as well, sort of in this case the county. Then they could ride a little bit farther if that's how the relationship develops. And then on top of the zone and where the scooters are actually ridden, we do have sort of what we refer to as slow zones, no ride zones. These are different pieces of tech that we can implement to make sure the scooters are being used where we want them to be used and not being used where we don't want them to be used. So, if there is a certain area of town we want to avoid the vehicles being used, we can implement that tech. And if there's an area we think maybe we should slow them down a few miles per hour simply because of higher pedestrian traffic, we can do that as well. The way our program works is it's $1 to unlock, and it's a per minute fee to use it. Typically rides are somewhere between 6 to 8 minutes. At the end of the day, most of the rides come in somewhere between the $5-6 per ride to use it. The less someone rides, the less someone rides, obviously, the less expensive the ride will be. We do have some options, equitable options as well that we want to push out. We want to make the program as usable to everyone in town as possible. And then finally, we provide all of our city partners with a dashboard. This is sort of where the transportation nerd in me comes out. But this is where you get really cool information of how many people are using the scooters, where they're using them, how to there's abilities to leverage the data to impact different projects that are going on in town. So every city that we work with, every city in town we work with gets an overview of how their program is operating and the health of their program. So that is the basic gist of it. We're certainly open to questions if there are any.
Is this mainly a daytime activity? Did I see a light on the scooter, or is this mainly used during the daylight hours?
All of our scooters are, they meet the requirements of North Carolina DOT for vehicles that can be used in daytime and nighttime. They have headlights and taillights. They also have reflectors on the side. The headlights and taillights meet the 500 to 600 feet range where you can see them at in the nighttime hours. Now we typically have a limit on when the program is operating. We run it. We want to make sure that the scooters are available for people to use in the mornings if they're trying to get somewhere. So we have them out there at 5 or 6 in the morning, available for sort of those early morning rides, commutes if necessary. We also know that there's a lot of people that find the benefit of the scooters that are working some of those later shifts into the evening. So we don't want to disadvantage those individuals either. So I think we always try to push it to somewhere between the 11 or 12 o'clock hour before we shut it down. But we work with the cities and the towns that we're operating in once we kind of better understand sort of the use cases that are happening to adjust that time to make sure that we're providing a safe but yet reliable form of transportation at the same time.
For a non-iPhone user, I don't know who that would be, but I'm sure there's some out there. How would they have access to the scooter?
So anyone can have access to the scooter. It's a matter of an individual needs to. I'd say 99% of the time, it's all through our app, whether it's through the Apple Store or the Google Android store. You download the Bird app. All of the vehicles that are in the cities that we operate in they show up on the app, and then they are available to anyone who has that app. They create a profile in there. That's where they also put their payment method. And once they do that, go through our tutorials, our safety tutorials, and we can verify they're a proper rider. Then they are free to use. Anyone at that point would be then free to use the scooters to ride.
Chris, is there a specific pickup place where you pick up the scooters and return them, or you just drop it off when you're finished with it at any point?
Yeah, so we typically try to work with our partners early on to. It's a bit of an art science aspect to this. So we have pretty good ideas where we think the scooters would be picked up and used. But the best part is as the program evolves, and honestly within the first day, we have the ability to really adjust those. The best, we call them nests. Go figure, right? There are too many of them, too many bird idiosms now. But we'll work with the city ultimately as the data starts to come in to identify the places throughout the town where they're being used the most, and that allows us to adjust those nest locations to really make sure that we're providing the scooters, providing the vehicles in the areas where more people are using them at the end of the day.
Chris, I've got a follow-up question to that. The fact that you can drop these scooters off almost anywhere and pick them up almost anywhere certainly seems like a positive for the consumer and the user. As a town, I've got a concern about them just being strewn out all over town. I've seen that in some cities, and what has your company done to combat that particular potential problem for a town?
Yeah, I mean, so two big pieces there is that, the programs that we build in smaller communities, I always, I hesitate to compare to a Raleigh or a Charlotte or a Nashville. These are much smaller scale programs where we really do have the ability to grow sort of strategically, right? We typically would only start with somewhere in the 25 to 30 scooters. Our fleet manager gets about 50, but they deploy them in a bit of a phased approach. So the scale is far smaller than some of the larger markets you may be familiar with. Those larger markets also come with a competitive environment, and I am certainly all for good competitive business. But in this industry specifically, there is a bit of a fight to the bottom when you have multiple operators, which comes with a new industry. So when you do have multiple operators, there is a little bit less accountability on the city side, on the town side. So when there is just one operator in town, you certainly know who to call and hold accountable. And then the real solution, or the real tool that we have is that fleet manager specifically. They are sort of trained and held to certain performance metrics to ensure that they are meeting the expectations of Bird and at the end of the day, then the expectations of the city partners, town partners that we operate with. They are the ones that are out there placing the scooters in the nest in the morning. They're rebalancing any of those scooters that may have been ridden to more low demand areas back to the high demand areas. If there are misparked scooters, or there are a scooter that may have gone astray and it's flagged to the Bird team, that fleet manager then is responsible to address that issue in a certain time period. And we have a number of avenues for that fleet manager to be notified of that scooter that may be misparked somewhere. All of our vehicles have email address on them. They have phone number on them. Our app has a tool called Community Mode, which is a direct line to our fleet manager, and we typically build in a sort of a 311 email address for all of our partners as well, where those emails go directly to our fleet manager and the account manager from Bird to address any of those issues that are out there, and most are rectified pretty quickly. I will say the other side of it is in our smaller markets, most of those misparked scooters, if you will, may not necessarily be misparked. They may just have been an individual that, left the scooter in front of a store, but happened to go into that store and buy something. So the other piece of it is sort of initial education that we work with the cities with to make sure that the community is aware of the program as well, because it's just a new form of transportation that just there needs some education on. So there's different pieces of it. Sometimes someone sees a scooter in a neighborhood and says, "Oh, this scooter's not supposed to be here." Maybe that's the case, maybe that's not. Maybe someone used that scooter to get home that day and just happened to park it in front of their residence. It just is unfamiliar to somebody because they're typically used to seeing cars. So there's an education piece, and then our fleet manager and the tools that we have to manage the programs certainly allow us to keep them. Ultimately allow us to meet those expectations that the cities and towns are looking for.
Chris,
Sorry, a little bit of a long answer on that one, but we have tools.
No, I appreciate that. And just one more question. Did I understand you to say that the town could work with your company to control location of use and also speeds? I would have a concern about how fast I've seen some of these operate if they were being operated in our downtown area. And I also would have a concern about them being used on our sidewalks, particularly downtown. How can we address that?
Yeah, so we do have we have the tools to create no ride zones, is sort of how we refer to it, as well as slow zones. If there is a more dense part of downtown, we can create sort of recommended parking locations to educate the riders on where to park, and also provide additional education on the rules in those areas. We have something similar. Town's a little bigger, city's a little bigger. Manassas, Virginia is just the one that's top of mind. We have an area where there's only 4 or 5 locations. This is how it started. It's evolved, and that's sort of the beauty of this program. Is it's sort of adjustable as the cities and towns need it to be. But the way that it started was we had there was what they referred to as sort of the downtown tour, which was a condensed version of their downtown, where they only wanted scooters, or they wanted to educate riders to park scooters in certain locations in that small section. So that's a sort of practice, a best practice we're happy to implement here. We've done it a number of places, but finding those specific locations where scooters should be parked, educating the users on those locations. And at the end of the day, there's a level of there's a learning curve, a quick learning curve, but a learning curve nonetheless on a new form of transportation. So whatever we can do to educate the users and the community early on goes a long way for the sustainability of the program.
Chris, have there been many injuries reported with using the scooter?
I'm sorry, one more time, please.
Have there been many injuries reported using this type of scooter? And what kind of injuries?
Yeah, so the injury rate that we have seen, and it's definitely lessened, or simply one of the reasons, because there's been a lot more rides on a scooter. We have a lot more data to pull from today than we did a few years ago. But all the third-party research out there and the third-party reports have lined scooters up equal to bike incidents. So there hasn't been any real difference in the incident rate of a biker or a scooter. That's the general gist of what the research is showing today, at least.
And Chris, I'm sure, as a follow-up on his question, I'm sure your company has a high limit of liability that you would almost have to consider in our environment today. But we would need, and I would assume that you would make us as an additional insured for liability purposes.
Yes, sir. We indemnify all of our city partners, as long as if they ask us to, obviously, and we add them as additional insured to our policy as well. Again, if they ask us to, we're happy to do that. It's almost routine at this point.
Chris?
How many scooters are we looking to pilot for this?
We would only, we typically give our fleet manager, if we have, in a town like this, we would give our fleet manager 50 scooters. Now, I don't mean that we would have 50 scooters out there to start. Our fleet manager would create they find a rhythm to operate. So those 50 scooters, 15 or 20 would be charging or being maintained. Another, 25 or 30 maybe out there operational. And then he or she, the fleet manager, would then be using that sort of secondary batch of scooters to replenish to make sure that we would keep 25 or 30 out there for the start of the program. Then we would just monitor to make sure that we are supplying enough scooters, and then we would work with the town to make sure that we are scaling up strategically. Giving that fleet manager 10, 15 more scooters at a time, if the demand were there. That's we'll follow the demand ultimately.
Does your company have Raleigh by chance? I was in Raleigh, downtown Raleigh 2 days last week in a meeting, and they had one every 50 feet. I'm serious, I've never seen so many in my life. They literally had one about every 50 feet. And at 9 o'clock at night, people were still riding them.
Yeah, we are not in Raleigh. We're in Charlotte and about 10 other cities or so in North Carolina. We're not specifically in Raleigh, but the program that you saw would be similar, although we have a different operating model than our competitors.
Chris, is this presentation tonight because we already have someone who's wanting to operate bird scooters in Edenton? Do we already have we reached that point already?
Not that I'm aware of. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we don't have any. We have a list of we don't typically find the fleet manager until the city or the town gives us approval to operate. We have it's surprising. We have a massive list because there is a section on our website where anyone could ask for or request for more information, show interest in being a fleet manager. The benefit of that is it gives us a list to start from to find a qualified fleet manager for the town. We would start there. We have a team that's dedicated on finding a fleet manager, sourcing them, vetting them, qualifying them to make sure they meet all the requirements that we've created to find a successful fleet manager.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris? Okay, Chris, hearing no request here, we thank you very much for your time and effort. And Arian, do you have anything else to say? Or?
Just to add that this would cost the town nothing. So this is bird profits off of their rides, and so this is just something to think about overall. Is there is no investment that the town of Edenton needs to make in this project. And this would not only benefit locals, but also visitors, and it would really impact their stay, and potentially, as someone who's interested in occupancy tax, potentially even get them to stay another night due to riding back from a Steamers game to their bed and breakfast, and just being able to have that luxury of easy transportation. And again, just to touch on how much we can change the program and kind of alter it to our needs when it comes to speed, zones, and safety. So just things to keep in mind.
And Councilman Howard, one thing to add here, I think you had a question on one of the specific tools that Chris may or may not have mentioned is kind of the tidiness of when riders are done with these units. There is requirements of a photo that has to be taken where it must be upright, must be in an approved kind of parking area, so we can really police that so these things aren't just kind of laid out across the sidewalk or in a parking space. There's a lot of control around how these units operate, because that was one of the first questions we had.
And what I would recommend that we do, we've done this recently with a couple of other new ideas that have come in front of us. I would just request that you and staff research, and I've already done some research myself, just the pros and cons of this. I'm interested in it enough to request that information, the pros and cons, and also look at what other reasonable regulations that other towns felt like were necessary. I like Chris's response to Mayor Stallings' inquiries about indemnification and being an additional insured under the policy, and I like some of the answers that he's given me based on my concerns, but I'd like for staff to take a closer look at it and come up with some recommendations and just kind of a review of the pros and cons and what reasonable regulations there are out there
Okay.
that could protect us.
You had a question, Marianne. Any of your tourism peers, are they involved with the scooters in their particular communities?
Yes, so at the Visit NC 365 conference, which was in March, I talked with some other TDA directors about the scooters and how that has impacted both locals and visitors. And obviously you can't really, there's no hard data that says that that increased in overnight, but or anything hard that's really TDA related. But when it comes to just visitor services, it's just another thing. It's like having more maps downtown or more of those QR scans around. It's just another thing that enhances their stay, that makes them remember Edenton, come back, and really helps us be memorable, as well as the luxury of being able to get from A to B on a scooter.
And you go ahead, Sam.
Well, my question is, could we design some places at Hayes for these scooters to go? So if we do about how far is that walking path going to be? 5 miles, something like that?
Yes.
I mean, could we sort of design something so that you'd have an area to let people ride these scooters through there also? I think that'd be a great,
Yes.
interesting thing to do.
And I think when we consider this as a form of transportation, even though the electromechanical piece is there that's somewhat new and technology-based, we really need to view these things kind of as bicycles. So any area that we would enjoy bike ped opportunities, this is a perfect plug for us to use another type of option for maybe someone with limited assistance that could use a scooter versus a bike or something along those lines. So I do think there's some benefit there for the fitness and walking trails, yes.
And is Chris still with us? Is he still
Yes.
online? Chris, what is the minimum length of term that your company likes to see when they come into a town?
As far as sort of how long a good pilot would go for, would
Yes.
operate.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that I always suggest, right? So this industry, this model does have some seasonality to it. So I always suggest any city, any town interested, particularly if there is some seasonality to that area. Now, not as much down there for you all as say a Vermont, but I always suggest seeing how the program operates in all 4 seasons to get a better idea of the utilization of this type of transportation in those different areas. Right, it's not surprising that summer sees stronger utilization than winter, but it is interesting for a city to kind of see all 4 seasons to get a really good idea of what the utilization actually looks like.
Okay.
That's always my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
I personally don't see any negatives about it, it mostly looks positive, where I see.
If we can put some good
Absolutely.
protections in place, and if we could review it after a year and it's just not working, we can say we tried.
If we don't have any money invested.
Come up with a good operating zone in our community.
All right, does anybody else have any questions either of Aaron or of Chris? If not, thank you very much. And Chris, we appreciate your time with us, and we will be looking into this further. We'll take no action tonight, but we will be looking into it further. Thank you.
Of course, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the adoption of the fiscal year 2022 and 2023 budget. and the budget ordinance. Corey?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I have Virginia here with us tonight if there are any additional questions. Just to kind of recap, we had originally met with the Finance Committee for our annual budget review work session on May 24th. At that time, we had proposed an additional draft and knew that there were potential for revisions or concerns as we move forward to the June 27th tonight's date. We did hold our public comment section during our June 14th meeting. At that time, we had received no public comments in person or at town hall via email or in writing. At this time, what we have presented, which was included in the packet, is the fiscal year 22/23 budget, as well as the budget ordinance that goes hand in hand with that. I guess some of the key things to note here, when we originally did our first revision, we were looking at roughly a 41 cent per $100 tax rate. After we received some more accurate revenue and expense numbers, we actually had to adjust that to a 43 cent per $100 rate. So we're looking at, compared to now, a 1 penny increase for our tax rate. We really tried to avoid this, but as we got closer to year end, we really found that was really unavoidable to stay at that 42 rate. In addition to that, we had previously increased some of our costs around our landfill costs that the town pays to the county for landfill disposal fees. One of the things that we were able to revisit here to help to deter some of the numbers that we had received around our sanitations, we're also requesting a rate increase for our waste and recycling. So our residential charge will see a $2 increase. Our small commercial will see a roughly $6 increase. A large commercial is around $22 an increase, and our housing authority cost will be roughly a $200 increase. The third change that we will see that's included in this budget was around our water and sewer rate. We will have a $1.50 per thousand gallon increment increase for water and sewer costs. We really tried to make all efforts going forward to avoid any rate increases, but with materials, supplies, fuel, and overall labor costs, it was just unavoidable in all areas. If you have any additional questions about what's here, myself or Virginia is also with us. We can answer any questions that mayor or council may have.
Again, good job, Virginia.
A lot of time and effort has gone into this. Corey and Virginia both have worked extremely hard on this and done a lot of head scratching. So, I guess we need a motion on that.
Yes, sir. So we, Virginia and I recommend that this action be taken tonight to approve the fiscal year 22/23 budget as presented, as well as the budget amendment.
I'll make that motion. On behalf of the finance.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And before we go any further, we need to amend the agenda tonight to include public comments of the June 14th meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. And we would need a motion and second for that. There was one public comment that was overlooked from our June 14th meeting that I would like to just read into the minutes so it can be included in the record. And so we would require a motion to amend the agenda to allow this to be read into record.
So
Second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, Mayor, thank you for that, Mayor and Council. I have 3 questions. This is from Mary Dale Jackson of 218 Osprey Drive. I would like to have these 3 questions included into the minutes from the June 14th meeting. The first question, when will the Chowan County Board of Commissioners take formal public action on accepting the town of Edenton's council offer to seek ownership of the monument? The second question is there a possibility that they may not? The third and final question is, if and when the county commissioners do resolve to accept ownership, what is the time frame for actually moving the monument? At this time, in regards to these questions as well as the questions from the 14th, we're still working with the county. June was also their fiscal year budget month. And so we plan to work on this starting in July. That does not establish a timetable for the county commissioners to act, but that's where we will be able to reconvene around their timetable. So at this time, I don't have any direct answers to these questions, but I do want them included in the minutes.
Can I have a question? Any indication, has anyone talked with representatives from the county to get a feel for how they will handle this?
I have not. I've only spoken with the county manager about us having a revised timeline, and at this time I've received no response.
Okay.
We don't have any control over their meetings, or what, we don't, so anyway.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, the next item on there is approval of the revised CG2 router for solar customers.
One thing, Mayor, we were gonna group items C through F. These are all part of the budget. The 2 rate increases have to be formally approved by council, as well as the 2 contracts, so we would need a motion for all 4 of those.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on those 4 items?
I do want to say, in fact, I have a couple of people that keep me posted on the cemetery maintenance work over there, especially mainly Beaver Hill. And these 2 people, I've seen great improvements with our contractor, with our provider. I know it was a little rough in the beginning, but thanks to you, Corey, you must have gotten to the contractor and told him the issues that people were having. The people I talked to me about it have seen much improvement.
Well, thank you for that, Councilman Miller. We have worked very closely with the contractor. There's been a learning curve for the town administering this type of contract, as well as the operations of such a large task, particularly in a very special place. But we have been very pleased with the current contract that we have, and we look forward to maintaining this relationship going forward. So thank you for that.
And Mayor, I'd like to make a comment. Corey and I met last week, and we talked about the concerns. 2 of the things that we're going to vote on in this group are increases to the waste and recycling rate, and also the water and sewer rate. And I expressed to Corey that everybody's suffering with price increases. Things are tough on our working class people out there, and I'm sensitive to that, but we're feeling the same thing that they're feeling. And when you look at materials, supplies, fuel, and all that, we really, we have no choice. And I don't like passing it on to our customers and our citizens, but we really don't have much of a choice. And I just want people to understand that we're feeling it too. And as a local government unit, we cannot run at a deficit.
And thank you for bringing that up.
It's just something we have to do.
Yeah, it's important, and we all hate to have to do that, but we don't have a choice.
I have a question about the cemetery. Corey, that increase, that's going to continue to increase maintenance of the cemetery over the years. Any thought been given is doing something like establishing a not-for-profit organization that could take over and be able to take funds and gifts and memorial gifts on the side to help underwrite the cost of the maintenance? Because it's sooner or later, it's going to get beyond what we bring in terms of any fees.
And we have not considered any type of special organization to do that. When we initially go out for this type of service, we go to those, experts within that field and reach out to them first, because there is particularly a level of service that can be second to none,
Yeah.
in that special place. And, the detail that's needed to maintain something like that, we'd be glad to find some type of organization to pair up with, to help there, but we really have to pay particular attention to the quality of service that we receive. I mean, this is a very somber location for both cemeteries and for the residents. And so I don't know the quality of service that we would get, or where even to start to find something like that, but we can definitely look at that going forward. This is a year-to-year contract. This doesn't commit us anything past this current fiscal year, and we can try to explore options for the fiscal 23/24 budget.
Did we get more than one estimate on this, or just?
No, we had one this time. Bud and I worked through this year, and what we found last year when we were going through our bids is that the prices that we were getting from very large areas closer to the coast, and they were just not competitive, and they were way beyond what the contract price we have here for a large group to do that.
And I believe, if I'm correct, I think we did a study, short study, in that putting it within our own employees will really cost us as much as it is putting it out.
Yes, sir, and we have not updated those figures since 2019 when we originally started this. Virginia and I had also discussed the options around potentially hiring more staffing to manage just that. The pricing we have for 2 employees was still higher than what the contract price is. And when I would be curious to see what our 2022 dollars would look like for that 7-month window that the town really has to focus on both locations, compare that to what a 12-month payout is. Which
Plus,
we could do
plus the
that.
cost of the equipment, you know, equipment is not cheap anymore.
Yes, sir. And we considered that, but one of the struggles that we've also had within our landscaping division, just like many of our employers here within town, we've really struggled to fill those positions. And this would allow us to maintain that level of service and consistency that residents have grown to recognize.
Any other comments on that section? Did we vote on that?
A
We
motion and a second
Yeah.
has been, but no vote has been formally
Okay.
taken.
All right. Okay, moving on to the approval of the
We
revised.
vote.
We got a vote? I thought we did vote. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're moving on. Approval of the revised CG2 rider for solar customers in Florida.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're an important person tonight.
We've got a lot to wrap up for the end of this year, so thank you for that. We did start this process back on May 23rd during one of our special and committee meetings with the Utilities Committee, where we had a proposed CG2 rider presented. At that time, we had received some initial customer concerns around that rider and the specifics that were there. Council decided to table that document until these concerns were addressed. As a follow-up, we met with local residents on June 2nd, following that May 23rd meeting to review any additional revisions. We've spoken with them since. What the proposed rider that we have presented tonight will allow us to do is develop a document that will allow our customers to go ahead and start this process. One of the things that we'll have to address in the future, and I spoke with some of the group about this today, is the supplemental charge, which we would need to have a cost of service study done this upcoming year, which we've already received quotes from electricities to figure out what's Edenton's cost for maintaining service to the homes. And then the second piece of that is we'll work very closely with the folks from electricities to develop the interconnection agreement, which is a requirement when tying to a utility system for these residential customers. But what we're presenting tonight will give them the option to go ahead and install the hardware. And the most important thing for the group is to actually be able to consume what they generate. So I think our customers will be pleased. We'll continue to work with them on those two items that we've got to address before we make revisions to this document this upcoming year. But Mayor, what we recommend is that council approve the proposed CG2 rider as presented.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
One question, Corey. In the attachment to the rider, like the city's recommended interconnection standards, at this point, that's just information, isn't it?
That's
It's not a requirement, it's not part of the rider.
Well, an interconnection agreement will be part of the rider. What was presented is a holistic view for interconnection that we received from electric cities.
Okay.
So when you look at the document, there was a lot there. We have to determine what the residential paperwork will be.
Okay.
This document also covers facilities as large as some of your solar fields. So there's a very small scale of what we need that we'll be able to pull from their recommendations.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, the next one is the approval of trolley pub ordinance and application.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Again, this was one of the items back on May 23rd that council tabled at that time for some concerns from local citizens. Since that time, Dwayne and I have been working very hard to revise the ordinance for this type of business in the town, as well as the application. These updates included requiring authorized cups / mugs to be used during operations, and they had to be approved by town council. This was to help us with any litter concerns that may come about from citizens, where we can easily identify the source. And then also, one of the things that Councilman Coleman had brought to our attention was the insurance requirements. So we also updated the ordinance to name the town of Edenton as an additional insured entity for no less than $1 million, similar to any other business that we may require insurance requirements. Both the ordinance and the application have been revised to include these concerns, and myself as well as Dwayne with our planning department, we recommend that council approve the ordinance and application as presented.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll make a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Have you worried that for a minute? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Corey, this, the latest revision, this includes both council concerns and citizen concerns that we heard from the general public. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? All right, motion carried. And the next one is a kind of a sensitive item. It's a resolution for Project Grand Slam, North Carolina Department of Commerce. Corey, I'll let you,
Thank you, Mayor. So,
what little we can hear.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm very excited to present this resolution tonight here to the mayor and council for Project Grand Slam. This is something that came about very quickly. At this time, we will refer to this resolution and this project as Grand Slam because the name of the industry is confidential, and we have to honor that when we do these type of resolutions for commerce. So on June 20th, myself as well as a local representative from DOC met with the local rep from this industry site where they shared their plans to expand current operations here within the greater Chowan County area. We are very excited about that. And they also expressed their interest in the opportunity to go after building reuse grant to help them with some of the costs for job creation. The exciting part is we were able to get the application and everything that we needed from the local industry rep. We met the June 23rd deadline. And some key things to mention here for Project Grand Slam is that this is the potential to allow them over 19,000 square feet in additional workspace, as well as the creation of an additional 25 jobs within our area. We have provided a letter of support initially with the application. A formal process for us does need council's approval in the form of a resolution to show council support for this project as well.
However, the announcement itself has to come from the governor's office.
Yes, that is correct.
We're not,
Did I hear you right, says it creates 25
that's correct.
more jobs
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
with the existing jobs that's already here?
Yes.
Okay, so why the big secret?
Do you have any idea when the governor might make it?
So these are on a 60-day cycle, with now being June 27th. We should hear something roughly in late August or early September. These type of awards have to be made public by the governor's office.
Okay.
Hey, Corey, can you share the amount? Is that confidential?
We have not gotten a dollar amount for what the building reuse grant could be just yet. We're working with Commerce on finalizing all those details. The key thing here was getting the letter.
25 more jobs,
Yes.
that's key.
That's great.
Yeah, that's key. All right? Yes, sir.
Oh, I thought you was asking me to ask for
I
a
am.
motion.
We got a motion, we have a second. We have a motion.
Who's the heavy?
I love it. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So the Grand Slam is taken care of. Okay, and the next one is a budget amendment for insurance proceeds for damage to a dumpster. We had a gentleman that ran into a dumpster and destroyed it and his car. So we have been paid for it by the insurance company, and we have to approve a budget amendment to accept that money and buy a new dumpster. I will entertain a motion to, we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
I didn't realize those dumpsters were so expensive.
Yes.
Don't you know, I didn't see it, but don't you know he did a lot of damage to his
Yes.
car to
Yeah,
have
good lord.
destroyed the dumpster?
Destroy a dumpster.
That dumpster don't give much. Okay, that ends our special meeting, and the next we'll go into committee meetings.
In the fiscal year budget.
We have one more, Mayor, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've overlooked, I have a check. End of fiscal year budget amendments. You want to take that?
Thank you, Mayor. I have, Virginia so graciously came in, her and I worked a little bit Saturday to wrap this up. She did an outstanding job. There were 3 budget amendments that we needed, basically from our general fund, electric fund, as well as our water and sewer fund. All of these budget amendments directly relate to salaries and wages, insurance, and the overall increase of fuel costs to these different enterprise funds and our general fund. Virginia is here with us if there are any specifics from the amendments that were presented in the packet. But at this time, if there aren't any, Virginia and I would recommend that council approve the year-end fiscal budget amendments as a group, all three at one time.
Okay.
But, we can't answer any questions if
Does
needed.
anybody have any questions? Okay. All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we'll move into the committee meetings. And the first one is our administrative committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Hyde.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. We have three matters to report on this evening. The first matter is a revaluation of our after-hours rental rate for the Edenton trolley. We currently rent that out at $100 an hour. This past operational year, we operated at almost a $9,000 loss on that, and just echoing what we were talking about earlier with some of the other recommended rate increases with water and sewer and the like, we need to take a good hard look at how much we're charging for this particular service. It's a good service, but our operational costs, our maintenance costs, and certainly our fuel costs have risen dramatically in the last year. The town manager and staff are recommending an increase to $200 an hour. And I do note that Rowan County, which includes Salisbury, which is a lot like Edenton, rents theirs out at $250. Raleigh rents theirs out at $200. The Outer Banks rents theirs out at $240. And so, the rate that we're requesting is competitive, and it would also help us not operate this at a deficit. So since the town manager and the staff recommend that rental rate increase, I would recommend as an administrative council committee chair that we move that forward to full council with the staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
Mayor, the second item is just purely housekeeping matter. It's a resolution for the Town of Edenton Fire Department verification. The North Carolina Department of Insurance does a regular inspection of the town and the town's departments, and one of the things that are needed is that we need to verify that we do support our fire department. It is a part of our town's administration, and it's just a verification for insurance purposes that we do have that relationship and we do fund them. And fairly straightforward. The Department of Insurance needs it, and staff recommends that we adopt the resolution. And with that recommendation, I would also recommend that we move that to full council for a vote on that in July. Lastly, I'm going to call upon Corey Gooden for an update on the Human Relations Commission. Corey has met with several key members of that commission and is bringing forward to us some recommendations that we may want to consider based on those conversations with those key members. Corey?
Thank you, Councilman High. I am trying to pull up the document. I'm sorry. It is not in the last two pages of my packet. I have, oops, just one second. Cool. I've got it.
You found it?
Yes, sir. So I did meet with the Human Relations Commission on the 23rd. I also met with Councilman Bond that day. He is also our liaison, as well as myself as the town liaison for the staff, to discuss some of these concerns coming up. Let's see. And from that discussion with the group and with Councilman Bond, or Mayor Pro Tem Bond, excuse me, there were, when this group was originally formed, there were a total of 8 objectives that were provided by council to this group as far as focus points. What the group would do is take those 8 objectives and apply them to whatever initiatives that they felt the group could act upon to try to help in improve the outcomes or whatever those objectives are that council had tasked them with. From that meeting on the 23rd, when we look back at last year, council had provided 8 objectives for the group, and then 22 initiatives were provided back to council as far as working tasks. Of those 8 that are there, currently the group feels like there are 7. 3 of the 7 that they would like to keep as part of the objective for them, and there are 4 that they feel like that they would like council to remove. What Mayor Pro Tem Bond and I had discussed about this is to consider what additional objectives that council could provide to move on to any current issues that we feel like our human relations group could benefit from. And this is something that to consider going forward. The group has done a really great job of completing the initial list of initiatives, as well as when you consider 7 objectives that council provided to be asking for 4 of those to be removed. That really shows a lot of work has been done in many areas around what their objectives and goals are.
And they're the ones asking.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the group is asking for council to reconsider tasking them with additional objectives. And one of the things to make note of here is that this commission is really tasked with addressing relevant and time-sensitive societal issues that affect us here within Edenton. And when we look back at the stage a year ago versus where we are now, there new things have came about, new things within the town that we feel like, or the group feels like, that we could recenter on and refocus on. So what we need to decide on tonight and what we can work through for the next cycle for the committee before we get to full council is to work on a draft of objectives, or we consider if the group has completed their objectives, completed their initiatives, and if mayor and council feels like the group has done its job, then we would particularly look into maybe disbanding the group if new objectives are not there for them to focus on. One of the things that we feel like there are still some items available for the human relations group to focus on that are focused on community development. I think those are some of the things that the council needs to consider when we talk about re-objecting them. And so that's as much as an update as I have. Councilman High, I'm glad to entertain any questions.
Well, my question is, are you and Councilman Bond comfortable with the direction that they recommended?
You said it, Jim. Go ahead, Corey.
If we can reestablish new objectives for this group, I think that the group would be able to successfully come back with us with more initiatives to give us kind of the specific details that they plan to focus on to try to answer those questions, to help clarify the community needs for those objectives. And I think that's something that we could focus on and have ready to present to the group at our July 12th meeting.
So we would have a couple of options at that time to
Yes.
adopt the new mission statement or whatever we want to call it, make further changes to it. I don't know if there's any interest in that committee not continuing, but there would be several options before us. And I think to get us talking, I think the best move is for you and Councilman Bond to work on a revised document and let us take a look at it.
And if there are any specific issues that the mayor or the council know about, things that are happening within the town, give them to us, and we can run with it, because there are still a lot of things that are wrong within our town. You know, a whole lot of,
Do I understand we have time between now and the next meeting to review these and make
Yes.
suggestions?
That's correct.
And additional things?
Well, I think that's the way we need to proceed then. You comfortable with
And
that?
I just,
oh, I'm comfortable with
I hope we focus on things that we can do. I mean, so sometimes, you know, these things start going into areas of, you know, like hire more teachers. I mean, that's not anything, we don't fund it, it's not in, we're not the school board, we're not the county commissioners. I mean, I guess we could recommend that,
Something
but I
within
mean,
our purview.
I just think we need to make sure we're looking at what we can successfully do ourselves.
See, that's what I was saying to you, things that are
Yeah.
happening in
In
Edenton,
Edenton, that we
that the
control.
council
Yeah.
can be responsible
Yeah.
for. You know, like you said, we can't hire new school teachers.
I mean, I'd love
So
to, but we don't have anything to do with
Right,
it.
that's all I need.
And as far as the group goes from our discussions, it's a really good discussion, on the 23rd when we met. They also understand now that there was some, learning curve for them as far as what council can and cannot control. And I think, this is an opportunity for us to really try to focus in on some items that now that they have been educated, with how the county government and town government react and work together with the school system and some of our outreach organizations, I think they can better focus in on tasks that we can make some changes on.
And I think that's a very important thing, as Sambo said, to focus on things that we can do something about,
Yes.
Yeah,
that we as a council can.
Did you talk about a facilitator or a consultant to be in there to guide?
One of the things we've
I am
considered,
the facilitator.
You're the
Yeah, I would
facilitator.
rather-
Okay,
I'd
you're the
rather-
facilitator.
Yeah, Mr. Bond.
Okay,
I'd
good.
rather-
You just overlooked me there.
No, because I know we have money available, correct? We have about
there is some
$5,000.
small funding there, within the, budget that we presented this year for that. One of the things we had considered, Tammy and I had talked about looking at, some of the other towns that may have had success stories with something similar to this and what type of, North Carolina League of Municipalities training is available for the group, as well as anything the School of Government may have when we talk about societal issues and how, local governments can approach those. So that's something we're gonna look into when we talk about a training need.
Well, I understand we might have several potential vacancies on the commission. Can we at the same time look at a way to recruit and to make sure we have a full commission?
I think so. There were some attendance issues that were brought up by the group, when we met on the 23rd. I do think that there's probably some opportunity to, not only address the attendance issues where folks didn't show up, but if someone feels like they are ready to, take that hat off, I think we could re-solicit, more applications for maybe newer members to be a part of that group. But I do think that there were some alternates that were on file. We could start with those, residents and reach out to them initially and see if they're still interested in being part of, because some folks are not there.
12 is a good number, you guys.
Yes.
That's what you get now. Yeah.
Okay, Mayor, that concludes
Okay.
the administrative committee's reports, and I appreciate it as always.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and that completes our agenda with the exception of our closed session. And we need to go into closed sessions to discuss a personnel matter. And at this time, I'll accept the motion to move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask the audience if you will please leave so we can go into a closed session per NCGS -143-3-8-11.